Field Notes 12, 19, 20, 21. Turns out lime lions means limes carved to look like lions and then painted lilac. The crew have collected them to prevent scurvy.
Where were we? Yes. I do actually want to watch the videos, the TikTok clips from... Are they videos? I mean, they're video. Do we call TikToks videos? If we're getting off topic, Sarah, just hit play.
So, because it's wound me up, let's jazz it up a bit. Let's talk about Vesuvius and the distal tephra. Let's watch the video.
Vesuvius.
When you went to Pompeii, did you go on a tour and pay attention? Because Pompeii was rediscovered in the 1700s, and by the 1800s...
Okay, this is just a technical thing. Why did you cover up their name for, like, the first half of that, but then uncover their name for the second half? Like, anyway, side rant.
It's where the 1% went to fucking party. We have not uncovered any more of Pompeii, really, since the original digging out. But
which is not true.
We do know that they stole everything. They broke a bunch of shit. They filled the pottery with their own wine.
I don't think that's correct.
And then drank it. All of the writing we have found in Pompeii off of the main square is written in ancient Greek. That Latin lettering is Victorian graffiti. Hell, geologists have known for years that there's no distal tephra to even show that there was an explosion of Pompeii's volcano in 79 AD. It's in any geology distal tephra study that you can find.
It's not. It's not in any distal tephra. Also, there's other ways of dating. I mean, Bears Ears is wrong, but there are other ways to date geological events than just looking for one thing. One thing that they have found. It does exist. It literally exists. Like, it exists. It just, anyway, I just wanted to watch that clip. I wanted to see her say the things herself out of her own mouth. We have dug more of Pompeii since what was discovered in the Victorian era. Yes, things have been broken. Yes, things have been lost. It happens, especially when you're talking about things coming out of the Victorian era. However, fortunately, Pompeii is still an active archaeological site today, so it's still being researched today. I mean, there's constantly new stuff coming out of Pompeii. New research, new discoveries, new publications coming out of Pompeii because it's a very active site to work on. So you're wrong. I don't know about the wine in the vessels thing. And since I don't know for sure that it did not happen, going off of what I know about archaeologists and archaeology in the Victorian era, I can't say it didn't happen because it kind of sounds like something that might have happened, but that is not me saying that it did happen, because depending on... I would have to do a good chunk of research, not a good chunk, but I would have to do another video on Pompeii to see who was in charge of the original excavations of Pompeii. Because the Victorian era, as screwed up as it was also when a lot of the more formal techniques of archaeology were being developed, and the whole concept of the site, data from the site is sacred, therefore don't fuck with things because it'll screw up the data. That idea started to develop in the Victorian era, and so I would have to see who was in charge of the digs that occurred in Pompeii to be able to tell you if that's actually something that could have happened. That's the only one that throws me. It was the Victorian era. They were crazy. They comparatively they were bad at their jobs. But I personally don't see that happening. Again, I would have to verify. I'm not really sure how you would verify it. There might be stories about it. I want to know, again, where Bears Ears is getting this information that they are saying. Because I can tell from body language that they're recalling things that they've read, watched, whatever, that they've learned when they're talking, which means they've read it somewhere. They've learned it somewhere else. It's not something they've come to their own conclusion on. So I want to know where they learned it from. And I suspect it's those books that I'm not looking forward to. And I, just from that early perusal of the Wikipedia article, there's active online sites for them to have gone to and gotten information from. So, as my partner would say, Russian trolls. It's hard to argue this one. I think that's all I want to say about this one. And I don't think I'm going to go after whoever Bears Ears is as a person, because, again, as I stated at the beginning of this, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, they are a person. They deserve acknowledgement as a human being, and I hope their life is good. But as far as this argument and this fringe theory, it doesn't matter. They just happen to be the poster child for it on TikTok right now. That's really all this is boiling down to. And the only reason they're as popular as they are on TikTok is because we keep making them popular. Noodle that one. But as far as addressing the argument as per how Bears Ears is putting it forward is not going to do any good. Because they're not even, since they're not arguing with substance and they're just recalling snippets of things, they're not even arguing the full argument. They're not even putting forth the whole theory, the whole argument. They're just kind of sort of spouting little pieces as they remember it. And it means that they're not as knowledgeable on the topic as they could be. They're not the person to go after because they're not the one knowledgeable on the topic. It's the difference between going after a kid who just read a book in high school on history and the guy who wrote the book that the kid just read. It's instead of going after the kid, which is annoying and probably satisfying, I guess, you should be going after the person who wrote the book, which is what I'm saying here. She did not write. Bears Ears did not write this book. Bears Ears did not create this theory. Bears Ears is not the originator of this theory. What you should be doing is going after the person who is and address their theory from the horse's mouth, which from understanding, that person is still alive.
Okay, so for those unfamiliar, tephra is the fragmental material produced by a volcanic eruption, and distal refers to that material being found more than 100 kilometers away from the eruption source. Bears Ears states that no studies have ever found distal tephra in Vesuvius. There's no proof it's ever been found, and therefore there's no proof it ever erupted. Yet this 2020 paper, titled A Disciplinary Study of Exceptional Prehistoric Waste Dump in the Mountains Inland of Calabria, Italy, Implications of Reconstructions of Prehistoric Land Use and Vegetation in Southern Italy, records a group study on the anthropogenic layers in South Italy, which they found to be abundant in charcoal, fragments of ceramics and bones, as well as a layer of tephra that, based on carbon-14 dating, originated from Vesuvian Pompeii eruption in 79 AD.
And that was the reason I played this clip for it. Again, go watch the whole video. She's got that paper linked. So you too can go read a really long paper.
That was the first paper that came up when I searched for Vesuvius distal tephra. I could list for you a lot of peer-reviewed papers about Vesuvius's distal tephra and findings of it. But I couldn't find a single paper that claims that there has never been distal tephra, or disproving those papers about finding distal tephra. Interesting that. 2. The Latin in Pompeii is fake. So let's listen to this video as well, shall we?
Are you fucking with me? Or because I took your advice and I went and found that journal from 2017. Heck, I'll link it in the comments and pin it to all of the...
I don't know if Bears Ears is wearing wigs, but damn, their hair is cool. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Research
it's really
that you're referencing. And
they didn't link
none of it is
anything.
Roman. I mean, there is this... But if you can't tell that was placed there later, I can't help you. But hold on. Enhance. You don't think it's weird that the letters are carved in just enough to reach the end of the space? You don't think it's weird that it's a combination of Phoenician, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin letters?
Why do people think they're Phoenician experts? What is it about the Phoenicians? I've even done several videos about the Phoenicians, and I don't understand why people who are people who are uneducated in the topic, why they all think that they're experts on fucking Phoenician. Anyway, Why is she showing you an archaeological site and then claiming that something's been placed there? Clearly this has been removed from the ground, which means it had been there a while. Anyway.
Or that it was found where there were.
That's a site. That is an archaeological dig. You're seeing archaeology in situ.
Other headstones with nothing on them.
I don't understand what's happening here. What is the argument that's being made? What are you arguing here?
Like, a lot of them with nothing on them. How did he translate it?
Just because you can't see the writing doesn't mean there's nothing on them. Those...
That's a tombstone for Pompeii. It's a joke.
Also, who are you to determine what's a joke and what's not? I mean, yes, the ancients are capable of jokes, and yes, they did leave several of them throughout history. Typically, they don't leave them on the gravestones. Though, I have seen a few. Most of them are modern. Like, modern history. Settlers, European settlers in the United States and onward, did tend to put quippy little quotes on their tombstones. I'm not aware of that practice happening in the past, but I'm also not a Pompeii expert. But I know that's not Phoenician or Hebrew. Hebrew? Really? The hell?
No, it doesn't say that at all. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, it took me a long time to find this darn photo, because surprisingly enough, Bare Ears doesn't cite any of their sources. I'm not sure if this is an oversight, I'm not sure what the reason is, but it took me a long time to find this paper, okay? And
they're never going to cite their sources. Citing their sources means they lost. That's the conclusion I've come to this. If you ever see someone citing their sources, follow them. Not the person, follow the sources. Don't follow people, like literally follow people, it's creepy. Follow them online. Anyway, my point being, follow the sources, because almost always when you do, you're going to create a circle effect. So what's going to happen is, if they cite their sources, it's either going to only go to a Wikipedia article, which I don't have anything against Wikipedia, but if it's your only source, branch out. Or what's more likely going to happen is, it's going to go to another fringe site that they basically just cut and paste the argument from, and that site will probably also have a site, maybe sometimes, and then that site will go to another site that is verbatim, literally. If that one has a site, it almost always comes back around. It's a giant circle, which is why they don't cite sources, because they're just normally citing either themselves, they're citing one of their other posts that has no sources, or they've copied and pasted, like literally copied and pasted another website that supports that argument, which is not how you do that. I mean, you can, but if you see that, that's a bad argument. And it's bad citing, and it means that you didn't even do bare minimum research.
by the way, the images that I've popped on the screen are actually from ancientgraffiti.org,
There we go.
which is a digital resource and search engine for locating and studying graffiti of the early Roman Empire from the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. The project has been ongoing since 2013 and has been supported by several institutions, including that of the Center of Hellenic Studies at Harvard University and the Digital Humanities at Washington and Lee University. If you're curious and you want to see graffiti for yourself, I'll leave the link down below. So weathering.
I'm gonna get spicy here. Weathering. Okay, Walter. As in Scott Walter, and you're fucking weathering on stones. Tell me about the weathering on the stone.
So most of the evidence for Bear's conspiracy against the nature of the Latin inscription seems to be its lack of geological weathering. So let's look at the first video on this topic.
Since
If you can't tell my opinion by now, I'm not even going to try to be nice about it.
the museum acknowledges that it's a recreation and not accurate. But sure, let's take a look at this this tomb. Allegedly found in 1884. I guess they lost all the pieces on their way back to the museum and just had to completely reconstruct it. You know, except for the inscription.
They don't even have all of the inscription. I hate arguments like this. Oh my god, it was reconstructed halfway through at the museum. Okay. And this is why I'm like, it doesn't matter if you present them with evidence. They're going to find a reason to dismiss it. This is one of the common reasons to dismiss any kind of physical evidence that you can present. It's because the museums oftentimes will do things like this, where you can clearly see some of those stones are older than others because of a thing called weathering. Actual weathering and erosion. Where you can also see that there are stones that are, I'm not even sure those are actual full stones. It looks like they're just like, they're recreations. My point is, you can tell they're recreations. Because it's been reconstructed even a little bit, even if there was only one reconstructed stone in the whole freaking thing, it would have been enough for Bears Ears to completely have dismissed this entire tomb. And that's how it's always going to be.
Which they faked. And you can tell they faked it because altogether now, there's no geological weathering on the letters. You know what, though? Kudos to the church for coming up with a variant of religion that atheists would buy into.
They're such an unpleasant person to watch. Okay, so let's look at the tomb of Publicus first. Beres says in this TikTok that the museum website openly admits to this tomb being an inaccurate recreation. But I trawled all over that website and didn't see such a statement. There's actually very little about the tomb on the website. I've included screenshots about the amount of text the website gives the tomb. There is a photograph of it on Flickr, and the description for the photograph says that the tomb was reassembled in Cologne, but not that it was recreated.
Those stones are a lot bigger than I thought they were. Holy crap. That picture does not do it justice. Which makes sense, it's a tomb. Wow, that's a lot bigger than I thought they were. All right, so a couple things here with the story of the brothers and the tomb being below their house. In any other given situation, and even in this situation, to be perfectly honest with you, that's a red flag for me, to be perfectly honest. If something like that had happened here in the States, that wouldn't be grounds for me to completely dismiss it out of hand, but it does make me incredibly suspicious about the authenticity. So, I just want to put that out there because I want other people to understand that there is a reason for that story to be suspicious. What happens after that is what changes my suspicions. It's, this stuff is verified by the authorities. It's verified by people who know how to verify this kind of stuff. So it moves these things out of the realm of being really good forgeries to, actual artifacts. My point being that I could understand why someone would not necessarily believe this story, believe this tomb to be real. But that's because I've seen a lot of people make arguments a lot of people make claims very similar to this here in the States. And it's not authentic. They're fake artifacts. I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm just pointing out that this story that she's so enamored with, that Sensei is so enamored with, is actually a giant red flag for me. But that's just a difference in perspectives. Anything else I want to say about this? So the geological weathering thing. Scott Walter does this a lot, or did this a lot, on his show, America Unearthed. And then I think it was actually America Unearthed. It was just a new season. Anyway, he tried to bring the show back. It didn't work. Anyway, Walter claims that he is a forensic geologist, I think, still. And so he claims that he could look at something like the carving of the letters here, and that he can use that to give you the date of the stone. Because stone and inorganic objects are, I don't want to say impossible to date, but they cannot be dated with the more popular and well-known dating techniques that people outside of the field are aware of. To my knowledge, there is no way to 100% date stone. You usually have to date objects around the stone, which includes the soil, any kind of plants, other artifacts, or just even the layer of stratigraphy that the object is found in, because the stone itself does not have anything in it that we know how to date yet. I'm sure we'll figure something out eventually, but that day is not today. So Walter claims that he can use a micron telescope or microscope and look at the teeny tiny little crystals inside the letters, and that somehow magically tells him how old the stone is. If that were true, we would have been dating stone long before Walter, because we've had this technology long before Walter. So, and we've been trying to date stone for a long time. We've been trying to find good ways to date stone for a long time for these reasons. We want to know the dates. That's what we do. We want to know what the time dates are for objects. It's called history. Oh my God, my hair. I'm so sorry. So anyway, so this TikTok person continuously going on about this geological weathering bullshit is bullshit to me. I mean, for me, it's just background noise, because I've heard it so many times from so many of Walter and Walter's adherents, because they believe that he knows what he's talking about, even though he doesn't. So I'm used to hearing that argument, I guess, is what I'm trying to put out there. But that's me. I am used to hearing that argument. For some people, it's probably a new argument. And if you haven't dealt with it before, and if you haven't, as even a believer like Bears Ears is, if you haven't encountered the pushback to that argument before, you probably think you've got a nail in a coffin there, which clearly Bears Ears does. But I got news for Bears Ears. You don't. The words that you are saying about these stones do not make sense. And Sinza does go on later in this clip to point out that these stones were found underground. So they were found covered, which would have protected them from weathering in general. So they've been protected from the elements. So the whole concept of geological weathering, or just weathering due to the elements, would not have occurred anyway, because these were buried and they were protected from the elements. Now, yes, the soils themselves can become very acidic. They can become, this is why we don't have as many artifacts as we would like to have, and why organic material usually does not survive, is because the soil acidity or the amount of water in the soil tends to destroy these things. This doesn't happen on stone, usually, which is why we like finding stone, because it survives. It can also leave these cut marks, these letters, to be very crisp and very clear looking, depending on when it was buried. If this was buried at not too long after it had been, and by not too long, I mean up to 100 years or more. Stone lasts a really long time, you guys. Go to a graveyard sometime. Seriously. And also, depending on the kind of stone, I don't know what stone is used here. I don't know if it's limestone, granite, marble. I don't know. I'm not going to make an assumption because I don't know. But depending on the kind of stone that was used, it will also determine how long the carving will stay clear and sharp and unadulterated, even exposed to elements. Again, go to a graveyard sometime. Go to some of these really old graveyards around. Well, we have them around here. Obviously, Sinza is not from North America, so telling her to go to a graveyard, I don't know what that means for her. But around here, I'm in Philly. We have one of the oldest graveyards in the nation. If you go there, you can still see 400-year-old tomb or 400-year-old gravestones. I'm just saying, they're still very legible, and they've been exposed to the elements since they were planted in the ground. So my point is that stone lasts. So this whole geological weathering thing is just absolute crap. I don't have a better way to put it. And I do wonder if Monsieur Book Author isn't just repeating shit that he's heard Walter say on his show and on his website, and that if that is true, which I'm just assuming it is, and you know what happens when you assume, but it would prove this whole idea of the fringe feeds upon the fringe. So, you've got this guy writing this 7-book series about how history is not real, citing another guy who has made a career out of stating that history is not real. I'm rambling.
Because this is a real stickler for bearers. So let's look into this more.
With gas, thank you for a specific example. Let's look at the statue.
How about the something altar in Bonn? It was excavated there and is from around 150 to 200 CE. Also, please link me your sources. That's not gonna happen.
Statue of Mercury. All right, here it is. Same problem as...
Oh, show the dangly bits. Get over just... People, we all have privates. Get over it.
The other ones. Y'all see it? Enhance. The letters were added later.
I don't understand that argument at all. Again, going back to the whole concept of you can't date stone. Let's pretend for a minute Bears Ears is right. Who cares? You can't tell when... Well, okay, so some of these letters you probably could, because it does look like there is some overlapping weathering. Like things that go through the letters. So at this point, we're using the concept of stratigraphy, basically, like the stuff on top is younger than the stuff on bottom. So if you have these letters and they have a line going through them, probably that line occurred after the letters were put on. You have no proof that this was not put on at the same time that the statue was built or that the monument was erected. What evidence do you have? Maybe I'll let it play. What evidence do you have to suggest that they were put on later? And even if they were put on later, that doesn't mean that they weren't put on during the same time period or within the same time period. Therefore, it doesn't make them not ancient. Also, this is not whatever you're getting ready to claim that it is, I'm sure. Anyway.
They do not have geological damage, aka weathering.
What? What do you call that? What do you call that? What do you call that? What do you call this whole line that you can see right here? What do you think weathering looks like? This whole word is almost completely obliterated because of weathering, which only further compounds the issue that this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and so they're not an authority. They don't have the knowledge base to defend this argument, which means they're not making this argument. They're repeating this argument that they've heard from somewhere else, which again, we don't need to be going after Bears Ears. We need to be going after the person who wrote the argument that Bears Ears is repeating. I really just said all of that to remind myself.
Also, hilariously enough, I couldn't actually find any provenance for this, so we have no idea when it was excavated. Or at least not that I could find, which means it was excavated back when Victorians were just stealing shit.
Oh my god, I couldn't find a thing on the internet because I searched the internet and the internet didn't have that answer for me. A, I bet you didn't look in the right spot. B, not all answers are on the internet. Sometimes you actually have to go to things like physical copies of things. And C, just because you can't find the answer to something doesn't mean it's not true. Also cite your sources. because I'm willing to believe that something that fantastical has a provenience.
And, making up whatever they wanted.
Not necessarily, and here's why. So once again, the accusation at hand is that the Latin is too pristine, and there's no information about where or when this altar was excavated, which is pretty true. There's so many museums out there that have artifacts that just don't give much information about it. So they assume that it was likely stolen and messed around with by the Victorians. That's one theory, but whilst Beres wasn't able to find much information about this, I was, and you can kind of fill in more gaps with this. So the name of the statue gives us some hints. It's called the Altar of Mercurius Gebrinius, Bonn. Bonn is in Germany, and actually one of the oldest cities in Germany. It dates back to 12 BCE to the Roman settlement Castra Bonensia. We can also see in another image here that there's a tag. It says Rheinisches Landesmuseum, which I've completely butchered, I'm so sorry. But we can deduct from this that that's taken for the museum that it's housed in, so we know where it's housed. So I went to this museum website, I started reading all about the collection's history, and actually I got distracted because this is really interesting. They actually have a tombstone, Marcus Caelius, circa 10 CE, and it looks like a very similar condition to that of the altar. As you can see, it's pretty nice, pretty nice. But it's important to note because, believe it or not, it wasn't found by Victorians. This tombstone was found in Fürstenberg in the Wesel district, and is the only known physical evidence of the Wilderness battle due to its inscription. And this stone has been in Bonn since 1820. I dropped the museum an email asking for some help and for more information on the Mercury altar. They haven't replied to me as of time of editing and filming this video, but I will leave it down below if they do reply to me, and then you can see it for yourself. However, the idea that it all came from the Victorians is again kind of naive, because in 1989, construction workers digging the pits for the foundation of the new Haus der Geschichte, butchered that, came across a well-preserved Roman cellar.
Okay, so this whole thing that Cinza does, and this is me being politely critical, because again, Cinza's not wrong. Nothing she's saying here is wrong. I have no issues with anything that she's saying. Please go watch the whole video because I have clipped things out. I can't say that enough. It's a fantastic video. The problem is Cinza keeps going, oh, this doesn't support your argument that it's always the Victorians because this date is after the Victorian era. So this artifact was found after the Victorian era, therefore it's not the Victorians. So that's not actually the argument that's being made. The argument that's being made is that all Latin language, culture, evidence of being real started in the Victorian era and proceeds beyond that point. So when Cinza says this artifact wasn't found in the Victorian era, therefore it doesn't support your argument, it actually does as far as Bears Ears is concerned, because it is a date after the Victorian era. And that's the mistake that's being made. However, well, and there's no however to it. Actually, that's the argument that's being made. So when Cinza puts forward this artifact, this is a Roman artifact. It was found after the Victorian era. That's the point. Bears Ears is going to go, yes, I know, that makes it fake because it was found after the Victorian era. So anything found after the Victorian era is going to be support for the argument that all Roman artifacts were manufactured in the Victorian era, because timeline, they do understand timeline that much. And then anything that predates the Victorian era is going to be a Victorian forgery, because in Bears Ears' mind, nothing Roman could have existed prior to the Victorian era. So the timeline for Roman evidence to exist in Bears Ears' argument is from whenever they established the Victorian era to have begun, which we still don't know what their dates are, to the modern era. You could find evidence you could find a brand new Roman artifact, brand new Roman settlement today. And Bears Ears will not accept it as evidence of the Romans existing because it is found after the Victorian era occurred. I'm hoping that I made that concise. It's not a fallacy that's being made. It's the problem with arguing with the fringe is you can't prove them wrong, because you're either going to, in their minds, you're either going to prove them right by presenting evidence like this. I mean, Cinza's not wrong. This artifact is Roman. It was found it was found in the right place for it to be a Roman artifact. It supports the idea that there was a Roman Empire and that Rome made it as far as Germany, which we already know, since I shouldn't have to defend that concept with anything. I got sidetracked, but because Bears Ears believes that everything past the Victorian era is fake, because it's all part of that conspiracy that I don't understand, but in Bears Ears' mind, anything past the Victorian era is part of the conspiracy, so it doesn't matter when the damn thing was found, because if it was found before the Victorian era, it is a Victorian forgery. And if it's found after the Victorian era, it's part of the modern extension of that conspiracy. As is clear through the different videos that we've watched from TikTok, people are constantly giving Bears Ears evidence, legitimate, solid, researched evidence, and Bears Ears is just finding reason after reason after reason to dismiss it. And some of these dismissals, again, are as simple as Rome didn't exist, therefore this is fake. And I don't have to back that opinion up. Like, that's the aggravating part about it. Again, since this video, Lady of the Library's video is fabulous. Please go watch it.
Just when I was editing this video, I just received an email from the museum. They actually...
Okay. This is an important clip. I want to watch this clip because it's fascinating and I want to share it with you. However, Sinza, darling, your hair, beautiful. Anyway, sorry. I'm just envious of people's hair because mine is such crap.
They replied to me. I didn't think they would, but they did. And it says, "Hello, Cinzia Dubois. We have 9 altars of Mercurius Gabrielus in Bonn. They were all excavated in the late 1920s at Bonn Minster. A retro-digital article by Hans Lerner, the excavator and museum director, was published in the Bonner Jagdbürger 135, 1930. Pages specifically on the Mercurius Gabrielus is page 19 to 22 of number 44 to 52. I attach a link below. All the best." They gave me a load of links and they said, "All the best, Tunda." Thank you, Tunda. Thank you so much. And I've also linked the same links that Tunda has sent me from the museum.
So that's why I keep telling you guys, please go check out her video, because not only is it a great video, as I continue to say, but she has links. So you can follow up on pretty much everything that she's used as evidence here. I don't think there's anything that she doesn't use as evidence that she didn't link. Unlike some people on TikTok.
There we go. It wasn't the Victorians. It was found in the late 1920s, after the First World War. See, this is a lesson. What you don't know, ask. Don't assume. Now, this final one I kept on last because it gets me angry. It gets me angry because the rest of them I put down to either will for ignorance, trying to troll people, or just general stupidity, rather than, blatant manipulation and dishonesty. But this one is...
And this is what I'm talking about from earlier, where it's like, as we get more frustrated, we humans, as we get more frustrated and more irritated and more passionate about a topic, the less of a filter we have. So, yes, we can complain about Bears Ears' nasty ass tone. It's a nasty ass tone. She talks to people like they're stupid, puts herself forward as if she knows everything. It is an unpleasant conversational tone. But the words that Sinza just threw out there, intellectual dishonesty and laziness and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying it's kind of the same thing. Anyway.
The ultimate demonstration of dishonesty and lying to people, because this is where it becomes reminiscent of how far-right political parties have manipulated history in order to further their agendas. The manipulation of history is an incredibly dangerous tactic that's used by very manipulative parties to oppress people. And the fact that this is being done so casually on TikTok shows you how dangerous it can be.
I want to show this entire clip because of the same reason, because of the reasons that she said, and because I have watched this clip before, and this one is so incredibly blatant that this clip, this particular TikTok, is what makes me wonder if this Bears Ears character isn't a Poe, isn't a troll. because it is so blatant and easily debunked that it's like low-hanging fruit, and it just seems suspicious. Let me put this out here now, though. If it turns out that this Bears Ears character, whatever their name is, on TikTok, is a Poe, and all of this is just performative, like for the lulz or whatever your reasoning is, stop it. I don't care what point you think you're trying to make, but you're not making it. It's not helping. And frankly, it does kind of make you look bad. If this Bears Ears character is honest and truly does believe the things that they've been saying and the things that they've been pushing, at least in these little clips that I've seen, I don't know what to tell you. But you already started your argument off with a dishonest claim that you had credentials that you did not have, which is, again, a blatant lie. Like a blatant lie. And now this particular example, where there's a blatant lie put forward as part of a defense for the argument, if you really do believe these things that you're saying, you are failing miserably at supporting them because you have no credibility at this point. Like, no one should. You have already proven that you are willing to fabricate and lie in order to prove your point, which means nothing that you say can be trusted. Poe or otherwise. Anyway.
And it's an insight into the potential for it to happen again and again and again. So let's watch what this person's doing, and I'll showcase to you why it's such a blatant lie and how atrociously dishonest it is.
I had not, so thank you for suggesting it, because I just did one on how you can tell the difference.
Have you made a video talking about the Raise something DV Augustus? Sorry. Which was allegedly written in the 1st century AD by Augustus himself. Just a DV? As much as Senza doesn't speak German, I don't speak Latin. I'm sorry. Anyway, that was the question.
Between an inscription that is real and not based on geological weathering, and this is a fantastic example. So this inscription is in Ankara, Turkey, and one side is Greek and one side is Latin, and it was reintroduced to the world in the 1500s. Let's take a look. This is the Greek side, which you can tell is pretty old because the cracks go through the letter.
I don't know what Senza's saying, but she's livid. As we mentioned earlier with her saying that like there was no weathering on this Latin inscription, that the altar to Mercury, when there was clear evidence of weathering. I don't even know what to do with that one. Now we are using the same evidence that didn't apply to the statue of Mercury, the altar of Mercury. Now it applies here because now it is proving the point. So again, you're seeing the weathering. Let's see if I can do this. You know, you've got clear weathering. I mean, you've got a discoloration of the stone. You've got these weathering marks. I mean, this was a softer stone. This is a harder vein of mineral that runs through the stone. So this part of the stone has eroded away, weathered away, and this part has not. You'll see this on tombstones a lot. That's how you know they're old. Looks like, I don't know. This isn't a great picture, and it's even less great because it's like smaller on my screen. But anyway, this is something you can look up on the internet is my point. But as you can see, clear evidence of weathering, which is the argument.
There's a discoloration where moisture has gotten in. There's erosion on the stone and the letters. So far, so good. Now let's look at the Latin side. I can still smell that new propaganda smell. Those letters are crisp. Mega crisp. You can see where they're written on top of the geological weathering. Which tracks
There's no geological weathering on those stones. Just FYI.
Because again, Roman capital letters were invented in the 1500s.
Aren't all Roman letters technically capital letters? I don't know.
Okay, so before I get into my rant, let me tell you about the Res Gestae. The Res Gestae Divi Augusti, which is the achievements for the deified Augustus, is the official autobiography of Augustus. You know, that man who, renovated the Roman Empire during his long reign between 31 BCE to 14 CE. The man that was made up, apparently, but okay. So, this is the most misleading TikTok that they put out there. See, this is where it becomes
Augustus, who the month of August is named after.
most misleading, because the photograph that Bearers shows as the supposed unweathered Res Gestae of Augustus is actually a zoomed in image of this photograph. As you can see, it's a new build upon which the Res Gestae of Augustus.
And this is where it gets blatantly. This is where the lie happens. And Sinza does get into it. I will let Sinza get into it. I'll let you finish, but first.
Has been inscribed upon it. This is actually part of the modern Avrapakas Museum, and of course, it isn't weathered. It was only built in 2006. This Res Gestae was carved into it in 2006. The original Res Gestae of Augustus was actually engraved upon a pair of bronze pillars and placed in front of Augustus' mausoleum. Sadly, it didn't survive. We only have copies of it. But copies, before Bears gets very excited, the copies that we have are also ancient. The copies of Res Gestae we have are carved into stone on monuments or temples throughout the Roman Empire, some of which have survived, and most notably, we have almost a full copy, written in the original Latin and the Greek translation, as preserved on the temple of Augustus of Ankara, the Momentum Ankarium of Ankara, Turkey.
I'm jealous at how well you do that. Anyway, that's a beautiful structure. But, importantly, we have, would she say, an almost complete copy, which I'm guessing the incomplete parts are the giant holes that are missing out of the side of the wall there. I don't know if that, I don't know if that counts. No, I mean, I don't think that counts as being incomplete, because clearly it's still in one piece. It's just missing chunks that aren't going to make that big of a difference, to be perfectly honest with you.
Which is what Bearers actually refers to, but they do it dishonesty. So Bearers shows us the quote-unquote Greek side. It's just the Greek translation. It's not on a side.
Okay, so here's a better picture of the picture that Bears here showed us in their TikTok. Clearly, it is an older piece of stone. Also, clearly, it has been weathered. I would like to know what those holes are. I suspect, just knowing history the way I do, that those are probably eroded bullet holes from when various British and European soldiers were stationed there and decided to use it as target practice. Because vandalism has existed for all of history.
And they show us this. This is the Greek side, all weathered. But this is the Latin part of it. As you can see, it's weathered.
Yeah.
This is the original Latin Res Gestae that we have to date. That's what this picture was based on. They use this to inspire this, but this is not the original. It's not weathered, it's from 2006. And to quote my favourite TikToker, enhance. Here is a close-up of what this picture is. As you can see, it is incredibly weathered. It's barely readable, but that's what this modern Res Gestae is based off of, and also an accumulation of all the other sources that we have, all the other ancient sources, the ancient copies of the Res Gestae that we have. So that's all I'm doing for today, because that was long, it was tiresome, and I really disliked watching their videos repeatedly.
I will let you guys watch the wrap-up of this, because she's just going to repeat what I'm going to get ready to say, and this is my video, so I should probably do some of it. I think Sinza did an excellent job. Not that Sinza needs my approval. I think she did a great job. Clearly she's knowledgeable, clearly she's passionate. My only critique is that it doesn't matter when you're dealing. That seems so dismissive, and it's really not meant to be. When you are dealing with the fringe and people who are quote-unquote true believers in weird conspiracy theories like this one, it won't matter how much actual factual evidence you present, because if it doesn't help bolster their narrative, they will dismiss it out of hand. Out of hand if they have to. So I liked this video a lot because it's fun watching this kind of a takedown, but I'm already primed to want to hear this. I am the audience. I am the choir, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to convince me. I was confused about this because all I've heard about this Bears Ears TikToker person, I know that's not their actual name, but all I've heard about this TikToker person is there's a TikToker who says the Roman Empire is not real. And that's all I've known about it up to this point, because I'm like, well, that's dumb. And I haven't even looked into it because I didn't want to get on TikTok. So thank you, lady of the library, for keeping me off TikTok. I owe you a drink. I owe you a beer. I owe you whatever. I owe you a fancy tea for keeping me off TikTok on this one. I truly appreciate it. I really do. It won't matter to Bears Ears or their adherents, because clearly they have a lot of people who are pushing back on this idea on TikTok, just going off of the comments and their attitude. But it's not going to matter to Bears Ears or their adherents how much evidence you put forward, because they aren't the choir. Is there something that's the opposite of the choir? They are the anti-choir. They are the ones that refuse to hear. And they won't hear you. Like, at one point, Cinza does mention that, like, this is willful ignorance. And it is. It is willful ignorance, because to accept anything that Cinza has said, or anything that any of the evidence that Cinza has put forward in her video, to accept any of that is to dismiss even the smallest part of this weird theory that I don't know a lot about, and I really do probably need to research more. But you know what? This whole month has been enlightening. I've been out of it for a while, and there's all kinds of new stuff to get into. So in that, thank you, Cinza, for keeping me off TikTok. Now, because I'm not going to make a video on Bears Ears, I want to get my points out about Bears Ears here now. And my points about this particular TikToker is that this TikToker started off with a lie. They started off claiming to have credentials that they did not have. These credentials were very quickly debunked because, again, the internet. Why would you do that? Like, at this point in the internet's lifespan, why would anyone think that they could get on the internet, claim to be something they're not, and have that last for more than, I don't know, a month or two? Like, especially when you're saying something unconventional. There we go. Unconventional, like the Roman Empire didn't exist. And doing it in such a shitty, snarky way as you are doing, which I get it. I get that Bears Ears is getting a lot of negative flack, not only on their TikTok, but also in other spaces on the internet, because that is how I have become aware of it. I get why your attitude would be shitty, but it's not helping. And when you have a shitty attitude and you have a weird idea, people are going to want to know more about who you are so that they have a better way of taking you out. Like, the internet is full of cats, adult stuff, and assholes. Bears Ears also does themselves no favors when they pull a stunt like the last example that Cinza shared with us, the Augustus litany, the history of Augustus, that is written in Greek on one side and in Latin on the other. They lied. Bears Ears lied. Bears Ears showed you the Greek side of the original monument, or of one of the original monuments. One of the ancient monuments would be better. Yeah, because the original monument was apparently in brass and doesn't exist anymore. These things happen. So they show us an ancient monument that is weathered, clearly. And then, to prove that Latin isn't real, shows you an inscription that was carved in 2006 because it's part of a brand new building that was built. Well, it's brand new now. It was brand new in 2006. But they're showing you a modern carving of an ancient inscription and then claiming that that inscription is on the same monument as the Greek, which when we go look at that monument, because again, it's the internet, we can figure this shit out. You can clearly see that the Latin that is on the reverse side of the Greek is equally as weathered as the Greek. We call that a lie. That's what it is. It's a lie. It's not even bait and switch. A bait and switch would be, here's one ancient structure and here's another ancient structure, and they're close enough in similarity that you can't really tell. This isn't even a bait and switch. That wasn't even the same kind of stone. And stone doesn't work like that. You don't have one kind of stone on one side and another kind of stone on the other. Not in giant blocks like that. That just doesn't happen. Maybe it does, but I've never seen it. But also, if we take... It's not just that Bear's Ears is blatantly lying. It's that Bear's Ears is being inconsistent with their argument as well. Because at one point, at the end, we're shown the history of Augustus. I can't say the Latin part. I'm sorry. So we're shown the history of Augustus in Latin and Greek with the weathering that Bear's Ears says, yes, this is weathering. Look at the weathering. But then if we go backwards in this video, only because this is how Cinza organized it. If we go back to the altar of Mercury, that Bear's Ears dismissed as being authentic because they claim that there was no weathering on it when there was clearly weathering on it. That's the inconsistency in an argument that you see within the fringe. That Bear's Ears, that TikToker, needs that monument, that altar to Mercury to not be authentic because it defies their theory if it is. So we're just going to dismiss it. We're just going to use any argument in the book to dismiss it. And because we learned the words geological weathering in a book somewhere one time, we're just going to keep repeating that because it sounds sciencey. And so we're going to claim that there's no geological weathering on the altar of Mercury when there's clearly weathering on the altar of Mercury. Clear weathering on the altar of Mercury. But when it serves our purpose, we're going to acknowledge the weathering on an ancient monument. But then, because that weathering that we're acknowledging is on one side and also on the other side that does not support our argument, we're going to blatantly show you a modern reconstruction of it and claim that it's the same. Anyway, that's all I really want to say about Bear's Ears, aka that TikToker. I won't be making a video on them, but I will probably be making a video on this weird-ass Russian horde argument as soon as I figure out what it is and the whole thing. I'm not looking forward to a 7-book, saga. We'll do what we'll do. We'll see how it works out. But I will be trying to make a video on it just to kind of get it out there and try to figure it out a little bit more. Again, thank you, Cinza, for your beautiful video. If you guys have made it to the end of this video, please like and subscribe because I'd like to have numbers like that. Also, if you've made it this far, leave a... Ooh, there we go. If you've made it this far in the video, leave a bear in the comments. Leave a bear emoji in the comments. Or just type the word bear in the comments. We're going to confuse everybody. So go ahead and leave the word bear or leave the emoji bear in the comments if you've made it this far. I truly appreciate all of you, and I hope you're enjoying your Dirtmas and having a wonderful holiday, whatever you guys do during the cold weather leading up to the new year, and I will see you all in the next video.